The night my sister's fiance called my mother trailer park trash, he thought the music in his parents' marble hallway was loud enough to bury it. He was wrong. I heard every word. What Dashiell Vance did not know was that I was a land use and property rights attorney in Reading, Pennsylvania. And for months, I'd been tracking shell companies tied to his family's development firm. At first, I thought they only wanted my mother to feel small. Then my sister sent me the map. Our 47-acre family farm was circled in red. 6 months later, Dashiell would bring that document to his own ceremony, not knowing it would turn that ceremony into a federal case. But that night, he was still smiling beside my sister, still playing the perfect fiancé, still believing my mother was too simple and I was too polite to notice what his family was doing. My name is Selah Whitcomb. I was 34 then, and most of my work came from farmers, widows, and small landowners who did not have the money to fight developers twice. I handled easements, zoning disputes, condemnation threats, title records, and the kind of pressure that arrives wearing a suit and calling itself opportunity. I knew when someone was being curious. I also knew when someone was measuring land in his head. I picked Mom up at Whitcomb Farm a little after 4. The engagement dinner started at 6 at the Vance estate in Chester County, and Leora had asked us not to be late. Mom was standing in the hallway of the farmhouse, smoothing the front of the denim jacket she had ironed twice. It was dark blue, worn soft at the cuffs, clean enough to shame anything designer in that room. Around her neck hung my father Gideon's wedding ring on a thin chain. In both hands, she held a small jar of maple syrup wrapped in brown paper and twine. She asked if she looked like she was trying too hard. I told her she looked like my mother. That made her smile, but only for a second. Maribel Whitcomb was 63, though the farm had aged her in uneven ways. Her face still had softness in it, but her hands looked older. Wide palms, rough knuckles, little cuts that never fully disappeared. Those hands had kept 47 acres alive after Dad died in 2017. She ran a CSA for 72 families, tapped 95 maple trees, sold syrup and summer flowers at the farmer's market, and somehow remembered which customers liked their tomatoes green enough to fry. People who saw the denim jacket first always missed the rest of her. Whitcomb Farm was not fancy. The barn roof needed work. The back pasture flooded when spring came too fast. The kitchen window rattled in January wind, but every acre had a memory attached to it. Dad used to say land did not make people rich, it made them responsible. After he died, when repair bills and old medical debt nearly forced Mom to sell part of the back pasture, she refused. She kept an old feed receipt taped inside the pantry door with his handwriting across the bottom. Do not sell tired. On the drive from Berks County to Chester County, Mom sat with the syrup jar in her lap and watched the fields go by. She was quiet, which was normal before social events. I was quiet because I kept thinking about the first time Dashiell had visited the farm. He had been charming then, maybe too charming. He helped Mom carry 2 CSA crates into the barn. He remembered she did not drink red wine. He told Leora he liked how peaceful the land felt at dusk. Mom thought he was thoughtful. Leora thought he was different from the men who had borrowed money from her and called it ambition. I noticed his questions. Was the North Access Road usable in winter? Had any utility easement ever been updated? Had the eastern fence line been surveyed after Gideon passed? Was the farm still solely in Mom's name, or had she transferred any interest to me and Leora? He smiled through every question. Mom answered because she thought he was becoming family. I heard a man taking inventory. The Vance estate looked less like a home than a place built to remind visitors where they stood. The driveway curved through manicured oaks. A valet opened Mom's door before I reached it. Inside, the foyer shone with marble, brass, white flowers, and a chandelier that threw light over everyone like judgment. Beatrice Vance met us near the staircase in pale silk and pearls. Her smile was perfect enough to be practiced. She touched Mom's sleeve and called the jacket practical. Mom thanked her. Beatrice added that farm life must keep people so grounded. There it was, polite cruelty, the kind that sounds like etiquette until you feel the cut. Conrad Vance appeared behind her, tall, silver-haired, smooth as a closing argument. He shook Mom's hand and looked at her palm a fraction too long. Then he said he had heard so much about the farm. Not about Mom, about the farm. I filed that away. In the hallway, while Beatrice turned to greet another guest, I noticed a framed photograph on the wall. Conrad stood at a luncheon podium, handshaking with Everett Klein, a Berks County commissioner whose name I had seen on meeting agendas. The brass plate beneath the picture read, Berks County Growth Forum. I kept walking, but the name stayed with me. At dinner, Leora looked beautiful in a champagne dress, but her smile kept arriving half a second late. Dashiell sat beside her with one hand resting lightly behind her chair. He told Mom a server to bring seltzer before she had to ask. He told Mom that Leora talked about her maple syrup all the time. Mom softened. Leora did too. That was the cruelest part. Dashiell knew how to look kind. Conrad asked when Gideon had passed, whether the farm was still in Mom's name, whether both daughters would inherit, whether the North Road could handle trucks year-round. I answered before Mom could. That depends on why you are asking. Conrad smiled and called it family curiosity. No, it was not. After dinner, I took the long way back from the restroom and passed a folding screen near the wet bar. Dashiell's voice came from the other side, lower than before, loosened by bourbon. He told Callum Reeves that Leora's mother looked like trailer park trash. Callum laughed. Then Dashiell took another drink and said that in 12 more months, none of it would matter. I did not move. I did not step out. I did not slap him, though for one clean second I imagined the sound of it, against all that marble. Instead, I counted. Leora and Dashiell hadn't even known each other a full year. The wedding was roughly 24 weeks away. 12 more months was not romance. It was a window. When I returned to the terrace, Mom stood alone with her seltzer untouched. Her face had gone still in the way fabric goes still when all the wind leaves it. She said she thought she should wait in the car. I touched her arm and told her not yet. She looked at me for a long moment. She did not ask what I knew. That was my mother's gift and burden. She trusted me before I deserved it. A few minutes later, as I walked her toward the valet stand, my phone buzzed. It was Leora. Do not tell Mom. I found something. Then the photo came through. An aerial map of Whitcomb Farm lay open on what looked like Dashiell's desk. The back pasture and eastern fence line were circled in red. At the top, someone had typed Whitcomb Tract Phase 1. Beneath it were 3 words that turned my anger into something colder. Row Premium Pending. Mom sat beside me in the passenger seat, still holding the syrup jar she had never gotten to give anyone. I looked at her hands, then at the glowing map on my phone, then back at the Vance mansion behind us. This was not just an insult. They had marked my mother's land before Dashiell ever became family. I drove Mom home in silence. I watched her porch light come on, waited until Mom locked the front door, then stayed in my car with the engine off. I opened my laptop, saved Leora's photo into a new folder, and named it Vance Meridian. Then I pulled up the Berks County public land records, not as a furious daughter, as a lawyer who had just realized her family had become the target. By 8 the next morning, I had slept less than 2 hours and had 3 county record tabs open on my office computer. My office was on the second floor of a brick building in Reading, above a tax preparer and across from a bakery that made the whole hallway smell like butter. Most days, that smell made the place feel warmer than it was. That morning, it made me nauseous. Leora arrived just after 9. She was not dressed like a woman planning a wedding. She wore jeans, an old gray sweater, and her hair pulled back so tightly it made her face look younger. The diamond on her finger caught the fluorescent light when she closed the door behind her. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then she placed her phone on my desk and pushed it toward me. "I saw the map in his folder," she said. "I do not know what ROW premium means, but I know Mom's farm should not be in my fiance's paperwork." Her voice did not break. That worried me more than crying would have. I turned the phone slightly and looked again at the image she had sent me the night before. Whitcomb Tract, Phase 1, red circle around the back pasture. Eastern fence line marked cleanly, not casually. Whoever made that map knew exactly what they wanted. "How long have you suspected him?" Leora asked. I looked up. Not knew, suspected. "How long?" "Several months." Her mouth tightened. She looked away from me, toward the window that faced the alley. "So while I was choosing flowers and pretending his mother's little insults were just old money awkwardness, you were, what, building a file?" I did not answer fast enough. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "You let me keep loving him." That landed exactly where she meant it to. "I did not know what he was doing," I said. "At first, it was only questions that sounded wrong. If I had come to you with a feeling, you would have thought I hated him because he was rich or because he asked too much about the farm. I would have listened. Maybe, or maybe he would have smiled, called me overprotective, deleted everything, and made sure I never got close again." Leora folded her arms. The ring flashed. "And Mom walked into that house last night with syrup in her hands." "I know." She was quiet for a long moment. "I should have told you I was worried. I'm sorry for that." The apology did not fix it. It was not supposed to. Leora nodded once, stiffly, and sat in the chair across from my desk. "Show me what you found." I turned the monitor toward her and opened the county records. Heritage Ridge Holdings, LLC, had filed a notice of interest on a parcel sitting just beyond the eastern edge of Whitcomb Farm. On paper, it looked ordinary. A clean entity, a neat address, a lawyer's office as registered agent. Then I showed her the mailing address. "That law office has represented Vance Meridian Development 3 times in the last 2 years," I said. 2 other LLCs tied to that same address bought land near proposed infrastructure work in another county. Leora stared at the screen. "So, Heritage Ridge is Dashiell?" "Not officially. That is the point. An LLC is not illegal. Plenty of people use them for legitimate reasons. But when a developer hides behind one near land that is suddenly interesting, I pay attention." Her eyes dropped to the ring again. "All those dinners, the flowers, the honeymoon brochures. It feels like a costume now." Her phone buzzed on the desk. "Dashiell." She did not pick it up. Another message appeared, then another. "You okay, babe? Mom hopes Maribel got home safe. Do not let legal paranoia ruin our wedding week mood." Leora read it and went pale. "He always knows what to say," she whispered. I had seen that too. Dashiell had charm that did not look fake until you knew what it was hiding. He had carried CSA crates for Mom, remembered she liked seltzer, told Leora she did not have to carry everyone forever. That was the line she had repeated to me after their 3rd date, smiling like someone had finally seen how tired she was. Now she looked at the message like it had teeth. I pulled up another document and pointed to the phrase on the map. ROW means right of way. If a transportation project needs private land, the value can change fast. Farm acreage priced one way today might be worth something very different if a corridor runs through it tomorrow. Leora leaned closer. "A road? A connector expansion, maybe. Nothing fully public yet, but if someone had early access to corridor information, they could buy land cheap before everyone else knew what it was about. And Mom's farm is in the way. Maybe, or close enough to be profitable. I didn't mention the FBI. Not yet. I didn't have enough. I only said the part I could stand behind. If state and federal transportation money is involved, and if a county official helped someone profit from inside information, this stops being a family problem." Leora sat back slowly. "Everett Klein," she said. I looked at her. "I saw his picture last night, in the hallway." "So did I." I opened the county meeting agenda I'd pulled before dawn. Everett Klein's name appeared in several land use and transportation growth sessions over the past year. Nothing criminal, nothing even unusual by itself, but I added it to the timeline. Then Leora took a breath and unlocked her phone. There is one more thing. She swiped through her photos and opened an image I had not seen. It was a picture of an email on Dashiell's laptop, taken at an angle, slightly blurred but readable enough. From Dashiell to Conrad. She is already attached. The mother likes the down-home angle. Should be locked in before winter. Leora read the first line twice. Her fingers tightened around the phone until her knuckles whitened. Already attached, she said, like I was a loose hinge he had finally screwed into place. I wanted to tell her he was trash, that she was better off, that none of this was her fault, but easy comfort would have insulted what she was feeling. She had loved him, or loved the person he knew how to perform. The down-home angle is Beatrice, I said. Leora looked up. She kept saying Mom should come to the country club so she would feel included. She kept praising the syrup like she had discovered poverty in a jar. It sounds different now. Everything does. I closed the email image and set her phone down. From now on, no logging into his devices, no taking documents from locked drawers, no recordings unless we know exactly what the law allows and what you are comfortable with. If he hands you something, note the title, the date, the company name. If he asks you to sign anything, you bring it to me first. Leora swallowed. So the photo is not enough? It is a lead, a strong one. But if this becomes bigger, every piece has to be something that can survive a lawyer trying to tear it apart. She nodded, but her face had changed. The shock was still there, but beneath it was something steadier. I can leave him today, she said. Yes. I can call him and tell him the wedding is off. Yes. Then his family says I panicked. They say you manipulated me. They say Mom saw money and got greedy. They bury the paperwork and everyone calls it a sad little misunderstanding. I did not answer because she was right. Leora picked up the ring and turned it slowly on her finger. I want to know what he needs me to sign. You are not bait. I know. If you want to stop, we stop. She looked at me then, and for the first time since she walked in, she did not look broken. She looked furious in a quiet way. I'm not staying because I believe him. I'm staying because he still believes me. I pulled the whiteboard closer and uncapped a marker. One by one, I wrote the pieces down. Engagement dinner, aerial map, Heritage Ridge Holdings, ROI Premium, Everett Klein, she is already attached. At the bottom, I wrote the only question that mattered now. What does he need her to sign? Leora stared at the board for a long time. Then she slipped the ring back into place, not like a promise, but like a disguise. 3 days later, I found Mom in the sugar bush with a coil of tubing over one shoulder and mud on the knees of her jeans. Late summer was not maple season, but Maribel Whitcomb did maintenance the way other women did prayer, quietly, regularly, and with a kind of focus that made interruption feel rude. She saw my car and lifted one hand. You look like you came to tell me bad news. I stepped over a low run of tubing and took the coil from her shoulder. Not bad news. Not yet. That made her frown. Mom had raised 2 daughters and buried 1 husband. She knew the difference between comfort and evasion. We walked toward the eastern side of the property, where the back pasture dipped toward a line of trees. She knew I was worried about the Vances. She knew I was looking at records. She did not know about the FBI yet. She did not know the name Heritage Ridge Holdings or what ROW Premium meant, or why Leora had started wearing her engagement ring like a prop. Mom stopped near the fence and looked out over the grass. I do not want you girls tearing up your lives over dirt, she said. It is not dirt. It is when your children pay the price for it. I wanted to tell her she had that backward. The farm had been the thing that held us when everything else broke. But before I could answer, she pointed toward the fence line. That was not there last week. A strip of orange survey ribbon fluttered from a wooden stake near the brush. Then I saw another, 20 feet down, then a third closer to the fence than it should have been. One stake sat just inside our side of the line, driven low into the ground, as if whoever placed it thought no one would notice. Mom's face changed. "Nobody asked me," she said. "Nobody sent a letter." I pulled out my phone and took photos, wide shots first, then closer ones, the fence post, the ribbon, the ground around it. I noted the time, the location, the angle from the old maple stump Dad had used as a boundary marker. I did not need to be dramatic. I needed to be precise. Mom touched one of the stakes with 2 fingers, like it had insulted her. "They did not wait until the wedding," she said. "They already started." A truck rattled on the gravel road behind us. Odette Mercer slowed near the pasture gate and rolled down her window. She was 71, thin as a fence rail, and had lived on the next property longer than I had been alive. Before retirement, she had worked in county records, which meant she distrusted vague paperwork almost as much as I did. "You seeing those now, Selah?" "When did they show up?" I asked. "Last Tuesday, I think. White truck, 2 men in safety vests." I asked what they were doing, and one told me they had county clearance. Mom stiffened. "County clearance for my land?" "That is what he said." Odette tapped her steering wheel. I caught part of the plate. Had a little county seal on it or something made to look like one. "Would you write that down for me?" "Already did. I knew you would ask." She reached over to the passenger seat, pulled out a folded envelope and handed it to me through the window. That was Odette. She might gossip, but she documented like a clerk. "Maribel never lets anyone into that back pasture without asking," Odette added. "Everybody around here knows that." Mom looked down, and for the first time all morning, she seemed less alone. Back at the farmhouse, I called Commissioner Everett Klein's office from Mom's kitchen table. Mom stood by the sink, pretending not to listen, while listening to every word. The woman who answered had a voice trained to sound helpful without giving anything away. "I am calling about survey activity near Whitcomb Farm. My client has not received notice, consent paperwork, or a right of entry request." There was a pause. "I believe there was a preliminary access review in that area." "By whose authority?" "Commissioner Klein was aware of it." "That is not an answer." Another pause. "It is not an official taking, Ms. Whitcomb, just a courtesy review." "Was written notice sent to Maribel Whitcomb?" "I would have to check the file." "Was there a signed consent?" "I would have to check the file." I wrote down the time, her name, and every phrase she used. Courtesy review, Klein aware, not an official taking. People hide behind soft words when the hard words are trespass, pressure, and abuse. My phone rang again before I made it back to Reading. It was the Harpers, dairy farmers I represented on a water retention pond permit. Their application had been clean for weeks. "The county says there's a delay," Mrs. Harper told me. "They said we might want to find an attorney who doesn't pick fights with development partners." I pulled off near the shoulder and closed my eyes. "Who said that?" She hesitated. "A man from planning. He wouldn't put it in writing." Of course he would not. By the time I reached the farmer's market that Saturday, the story had already moved faster than I wanted. Etta Brooks, one of Mom's longtime CSA customers, stopped me beside a table of late peaches. "Is your mom all right?" "She's hanging in." Etta lowered her voice. "I heard surveyors were out by the back pasture. Maribel would never sell that land. She let my family pay late for our CSA the year my husband lost his job. She still saves syrup for the school fundraiser every winter. If somebody thinks she doesn't belong on that farm, they don't know who that farm belongs to." That sentence stayed with me. A few days later, I met Tamsin Vale at a diner outside Pottstown. We had gone to law school together before she went federal and I went local. She was 36, sharp-eyed, and careful in the way people become when their work can ruin lives if they get sloppy. I slid a folder across the table. "Public records," I said. "Heritage Ridge Holdings. Photos of the map and survey ribbons. Notes from Klein's office, the email Leora found before I knew any of this, and Everett Klein's name on transportation growth agendas. Tamsin did not touch her coffee until she finished reading. This is a lead, Selah, not a case yet. I know. Your sister's photos help explain why you are concerned, but they cannot be the backbone. If this goes anywhere, we need independent verification, subpoenaed records, financial trail, official communications, a witness if one exists. There may be federal transportation money tied to the corridor. Then it gets more interesting, but nobody kicks in a door because a rich fiancé is disgusting. I almost smiled. Good. I do not want theater. I want it clean. Then keep it clean. No more documents from his laptop. No recordings unless someone walks you through Pennsylvania law and the circumstances. No guessing. No shortcuts. Defense attorneys love shortcuts. I nodded. Tamsin closed the folder. Give me a few weeks. She took longer than that. Almost 4 weeks passed. Leora kept playing bride, and every time Dashiell texted her about flowers or tastings, she forwarded me the parts that involved paperwork. Mom knew something was wrong, but not the whole shape of it. I kept working, though 2 more clients suddenly had county delays that smelled the same. Leora called one night from her car. He asked why I care about legal documents all of a sudden. What did you say? That marrying him means understanding what I'm signing. Good. He said you see lawsuits everywhere, that you're turning something beautiful into something ugly. That is not love. That's management. She was quiet, then gave a tired laugh. Beatrice wants Mom to come to the bridal shower early, something about making sure she feels comfortable in photos. Presentation. Exactly. When Tamsin finally called, I was in my office after dark, the whiteboard still covered with names and arrows. You sitting down? She asked. I am now. Subpoenaed records show Heritage Ridge has financial ties to Vance Meridian. There's a draft option agreement around parcels near your mother's farm, and there's an internal note from Conrad Vance to Julian Sorrell, his CFO. I held the phone tighter. What kind of note? Short, ugly, EK 15 after closing. I looked at Everett Klein's name on my board. Can you tie EK to Everett? Not yet, but with his access review, meeting history, and the corridor timing, it's more than smoke. Julian Sorrell may want to talk to if he decides he doesn't want to go down with them. Then she said the words that made the room feel smaller. Selah, this is moving into public corruption territory. I drove to the farm before I went home. Mom was at the eastern fence line, looking at the orange ribbons moving in the dark like little warning flags. I think this is bigger than Dashiell, I said. She did not look surprised. She looked tired, but not small. Then don't do it because they insulted me. She reached down and pulled a loose ribbon from the grass. Do it because they're stealing. I took an evidence bag from my coat pocket, and she placed the ribbon inside. Then we walked back toward the farmhouse together, the porch light waiting for us across the field. By early winter, after months of Leora playing bride and Tamsin building the case quietly, the bridal shower was held 2 weeks before the wedding at a country club in Chester County, the kind of place where the flowers looked expensive and the smiles looked rehearsed. Beatrice Vance had planned every inch of it. White linens, pale pink roses, silver trays, women in pearls speaking softly about charity boards and summer houses. Mom wore a simple dark blue dress and Gideon's ring on her chain. She looked steady when we walked in, but I noticed how carefully she kept her shoulders back, like posture alone could protect her. Beatrice swept toward us with a gift bag in one hand. "Marie-Belle, I thought of you especially," she said. Mom took the bag, surprised. Inside was a gift card for a styling salon in Wayne, tucked inside tissue paper with a cream-colored bow. Beatrice smiled wider. "Just so everyone feels comfortable in the wedding photographs." The women around us gave little polite laughs, the kind that vanish before they reach anyone's eyes. Mom looked at the card, then back at Beatrice. "That is thoughtful of you," Mom said. She did not sound hurt. That made it worse. Across the room, Leora went completely still. Her fingers tightened around the stem of her champagne glass. I saw the moment she almost broke character. Outside, after the shower, she got into my car and shut the door hard enough to rattle the window. "I want to take this ring off and tell them all to go to hell." "Then we stop," I said. She looked at me. "I mean it. We stop today if you want." Her breathing was quick. She stared through the windshield at the manicured hedges in front of the club. "If I stop now, Beatrice will say I got emotional. Conrad will say you poisoned me. Dashiell will say Mom misunderstood everything, and whatever paper they need me to sign disappears." I did not answer, because she had learned the shape of their defense before they even used it. "What do you want, Leora?" "I want the thing he needs from me." That afternoon, Noelle Hart caught Leora in the parking lot. Noelle had been her closest friend since community college, and she knew Leora well enough to see the cracks under the makeup. "Are you sure you want to marry him?" Noelle asked. Leora did not tell her everything. She only said, "I think I mistook someone for a future." Noelle took her hand. "If you decide not to walk into that church, I will stand outside the door with you." Leora nodded, but she did not cry until Noelle drove away. That evening, I told Mom more than I had planned. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table where Dad used to sharpen pocket knives and sort seed packets. I told her about Heritage Ridge Holdings. I told her Vance Meridian was tied to the land around our eastern fence line. I told her Everett Klein's name had surfaced more than once. I told her Dashiell might try to use marriage documents to reach any future interest Leora could have in the farm. Mom listened without interrupting. When I finished, she stood up, went to her bedroom, and came back with a dented tin box. Inside were the old deed, a hand-drawn map from Gideon, the final mortgage receipt, and a folded feed receipt with Dad's handwriting on it. "Do not sell tired." Mom placed the map in front of me and tapped the north access road. "He asked about this the first time he came here." "Dashiell," she nodded. "He stood right by the barn and asked if that road stayed firm after rain. I thought he was making conversation." Her voice stayed calm, but her hand did not. "Your father did not leave this land so a man in a blazer could call it an asset." 2 days later, Annalise Crow, the Vance family attorney, sent Leora a new legal packet. The prenup had already been sent weeks before. This was something else, a final acknowledgement and LLC consent addendum. I read it twice before I let Leora see my face. The language was soft: marital efficiency, streamlined family asset planning, avoiding probate complications. The meaning was not soft. Any future inherited real estate interest Leora received from Maribel would be transferred into Whitcomb Vance Family Holdings within 120 days of ownership. Dashiell would hold 51% managing control. Leora read the section 3 times. Then she set the paper down like it had burned her. "He is planning for the day Mom dies like it's a closing date." "You can stop now," I said. "No." Her voice was quiet. "I want him to put this trap in front of me himself." Tamsin met me the next morning in a parking lot outside a coffee shop near King of Prussia. She did not get out of her car. I slid into the passenger seat with the addendum copy in a folder. "Julian Sorrell is cooperating," she said. I looked at her. "The CFO?" She nodded. "Subpoenaed financial records tie Heritage Ridge to Vance Meridian. There are communications about the corridor review. There are references to a benefit after closing that line up with Everett Klein's access approvals. We are preparing a warrant, but we do not move unless it is clean." "Why wait for the wedding?" "Because Dashiell is expected to bring the original addendum and the folder. Conrad may have devices and related documents with him. After the ceremony, they intend to move the signed packet through counsel and escrow. If the original disappears, the case gets harder." Tamsin looked at me long enough to make sure I heard the next part. "Leora can stop at any second. Do not force the moment." I would not. "Good. A case is not worth your sister." Sheriff Jonah Price was briefed only for safety. He was not there to play hero. If the warrant had to be executed at the church, his job was to keep 200 startled guests from turning a federal action into chaos. The night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, Conrad sat beside me like placement had been a strategy. "Small-town attorneys sometimes mistake paperwork for power," he said. "Only people afraid of paperwork say that." His smile thinned. Across the room, Dashiell watched Leora too closely. Beatrice adjusted the seating chart twice and reminded Mom about photographs. Mom did not argue. She only looked at me once, and I understood. She was done proving she belonged anywhere. On the morning of the wedding, Leora's face was pale but steady. Noelle stood near her with tissues she never used. Mom wore the blue dress again, Gideon's ring resting against her chest. Outside the church, Tamsin's team stayed out of sight. Sheriff Jonah Price was near the entrance, calm and ordinary. Then Dashiell texted, "Bringing the folder. We will sign before the ceremony, then no more legal stress." Leora forwarded it to me. "Only if you choose," I wrote back. Minutes later, Dashiell met her in the small room beside the sanctuary, leather folder in hand. "After today, your family's land problem becomes our problem," he said. He offered her the addendum. Leora did not sign. She held the folder and held it against her bouquet. "Then let's do this in front of everyone," she said. He smiled, thinking she meant the wedding. The music began inside the church. Reverend Paul Redding stood at the altar. Conrad checked his phone. Beatrice fixed her smile. Mom sat straight in the front pew, one hand pressed over Gideon's ring. The doors opened. Leora stepped into the aisle alone, flowers in one hand, folder in the other. The church went quiet in the way a room quiets when everyone thinks they know what happens next. Beatrice smiled from the front pew, her pearl earrings catching the light. Conrad sat beside her, with his phone in one hand. Dashiell stood at the altar in a black suit, calm and perfect, like a man waiting for a signature he already owned. Mom sat beside me with Gideon's ring pressed under her fingers. She did not lower her head. She did not hide. She watched Leora walk down that aisle as if every step mattered. When Leora reached the front, Dashiell leaned close. "You have the folder." Leora looked at him. "I do." He smiled, and for 1 second, I saw the version of him that had fooled all of us. Gentle eyes, warm voice, a hand offered like safety. Then Reverend Paul Redding began speaking about trust, covenant, and two families becoming one. Leora lifted her hand. "Before we go any further, there is something I need to say." Reverend Paul stopped. The room shifted. A few guests turned in their seats. Dashiell's smile held, but only barely. Leora's hand trembled around the folder. Her voice did not. "I thought today was my wedding day. I thought I was marrying a man who loved me. I thought his family wanted to welcome my mother, but I was wrong. They were not welcoming my mother. They were studying her land." Dashiell whispered her name like a warning. She opened the folder and laid out the copies I had prepared, while the original addendum stayed inside the leather folder. "This is an aerial map of Whitcomb Farm. It was in Dashiell's papers before he ever put a ring on my finger. My mother's back pasture and eastern fence line were circled in red. The page called it Whitcomb Tract, Phase 1. A murmur moved through the church. Leora placed the page near the altar. "And this is an email from Dashiell to his father. It says, 'I was already attached.' It says my mother liked the down-home angle. It says I should be locked in before winter." Beatrice's face went pale, but she kept her chin lifted. Dashiell reached for Leora's arm. "You are confused." Leora stepped away from him. "No, for the first time in months, I am not." She took out the next set of pages. Heritage Ridge Holdings was not some unrelated company. It was tied to Vance Meridian Development, and this addendum, the one Dashiell wanted me to sign before the ceremony, would have moved any future inherited real estate interest I received from my mother into Whitcomb Vance Family Holdings. She looked at the guests, then at Dashiell. Dashiell would hold 51% managing control. Conrad stood. "This is private family planning." Leora turned to him. "If it was family planning, why was my mother's farm in your folder before I had a ring?" No one answered. She continued now, calmer, almost painfully calm. There is more. ROW premium pending, transportation corridor review, access review, voting records tied to Everett Klein, an internal note that reads EK 15 after closing. I am not here to decide what a court will decide. I am here to say these documents have already been given to the proper authorities. Conrad's expression hardened. He moved towards the aisle, phone tight in his hand. This is defamation. Beatrice stood too. This is not the place. Mom rose from the pew before I could move. Her voice was not loud, but it reached every corner of that church. You made it the place when you brought my land into my daughter's marriage. That was when Tamsin Vale stood from the back row. Federal agents entered with control, not chaos. Jonah Price and 2 deputies moved quietly near the doors, palms low, keeping guests seated and calm. No one shouted, no one rushed. That made it more real. Tamsin approached Conrad first. We have a federal search and seizure warrant for documents, devices, and materials related to Vance Meridian Development, Heritage Ridge Holdings, and associated entities. We also have separate arrest warrants signed this morning for Conrad Vance and Dashiell Vance. Conrad looked at her like rank alone should protect him. Tamsin did not blink. Conrad Vance, you are being taken into custody in connection with an investigation involving wire fraud, conspiracy, and bribery-related public corruption. Dashiell looked at the folder in Leora's hands as if it had betrayed him. Tamsin turned to him. Dashiell Vance, you are being taken into custody for your role in the conspiracy and fraud scheme. The room broke into whispers. Someone gasped. Beatrice clutched the back of the pew. Tamsin added that Everett Klein had been detained in a coordinated action earlier that afternoon. She made it clear Beatrice was being asked for a statement and had the right to contact counsel. She did not call her guilty. That mattered. This was not revenge theater. This was the law arriving with paperwork stronger than their money. Beatrice turned to Mom, desperate now. This is a misunderstanding. I stood then. My mother was never the one who did not belong here. She was the one you could not buy. Leora took off the ring. She did not throw it. She placed it on top of the addendum. This was never a marriage. It was a closing. Then she walked down from the altar. Noelle wrapped an arm around her shoulders near the side aisle. Mom took Leora's hand, and I walked on Mom's other side. We left the church together, while behind us, the Vance family lost the room they had built to admire them. Over the following months, the story became less dramatic and more permanent. Julian Sorrell cooperated with prosecutors. Vance Meridian Development came under investigation. Heritage Ridge Holdings and the related shell companies were pulled apart record by record. Everett Klein was signed and entered a plea tied to false statements, public corruption, and financial benefits connected to the development scheme. Dashiell took a plea for his part in using his relationship with Leora to reach our family's land. Conrad fought longer, but the internal notes, financial records, witness testimony, and corridor documents lined up. Sentencing came later. Conrad paid the heaviest price. Dashiell paid his. Everett lost the power he had sold. Beatrice was not charged when prosecutors could not prove enough direct knowledge, but the life she valued collapsed in quieter ways. Her charity board asked her to resign. The country club removed her from the gala committee. Women who had laughed at her little jokes during the bridal shower stopped taking her calls. The transportation corridor review was audited. Whitcomb Farm was not forced into the deal Vance had tried to build around it. If the government ever reviewed that land again, Mom would have notice, counsel, hearings, and a real appraisal. We did not beat the government. We beat a family that tried to use inside information, marriage papers, and shell companies to buy grief at a discount. Leora did not heal overnight. She returned the dress. She deleted engagement photos slowly. She took time away from work, then came back to my office different, not harder, clearer. She started studying for law school because she understood now that one signature could change a life. Mom went back to the eastern fence line herself. Leora and I walked with her, but we did not do it for her. She pulled the remaining orange ribbons from the brush and dropped them into an old metal bin in the barn. Then she planted maple saplings near the fence. Your father would not believe we won with paperwork, Mom said. He would believe the part where you refused to sell, I told her. That evening, we went to Miriam Haskett's diner near Douglasville. Miriam did not ask for details. She set down coffee, pancakes, and a slice of pie we had not ordered. Maribel, around here, everybody knows whose hands built that farm. Odette nodded from a corner booth. Later, Etta texted that the CSA families were waiting for next season. That was when I understood what revenge really was. It was not the moment Dashiell was taken from the church. It was my mother sitting in a diner, drinking coffee, no longer trying to make herself smaller. It was Leora removing a ring without losing herself. It was knowing paper could be used to steal from people, but it could also protect them. Dashiell thought that wedding would give Leora's future. Instead, it gave Leora back her own. And my mother did not just keep the farm, she kept her dignity in front of the people who thought it could be bought cheap. If you have ever seen a good person looked down on just because they lived simply, comment dignity. If you have ever had to protect your mother, tell me where you're listening from. And if you believe the truth doesn't have to scream to win, subscribe for more stories like this. The last thing I remember from that evening was Mom standing by the fence line at sunset, soil on her hands, the new maple saplings catching the light. This time, nothing was marked for taking. It was marked for growing.